Well, good afternoon, everyone, or I guess good afternoon, everyone. It is I, your pal, J.Ishiro Finney, author and alien in a human suit, and I'm on the air. I am on the air because I awoke screaming about an hour ago, and my head isn't straight. My head is not screwed on right, and so it is time just to talk for a bit until my brain either decides it's time to go back to bed, or I can functionally sit down and write something. Now, I would be complaining. I mean, sleep's been shit for the last couple days, but on the upside, I've also written quite a bit in the last couple days. So it's a kind of a, I'll take it or leave it. Who the fuck knows? It isn't very good for my sanity, I'll be honest. Um, you stay awake for about 31 hours straight. You will start hallucinating and dreaming awake. It's quite an interesting experience. Has anyone else ever been awake so long that you start hallucinating? Just out of curiosity. Um, I guess the upside of this story is I'm. Do I miss my home world? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. I mean, I used to really like this place, but everything's gone to shit lately. I think everybody's insane, but Arizona's pretty good. I like Arizona. Roused hour. Yes. Yes. Zeta Reticula, a binary star system. Very, very different. Orbit, two suns, the orbit, you have basically a day, and then as you go into the night side, you suddenly get like a hour in the afternoon where suddenly it's daylight again. You stayed up till sunrise, but no hallucinations. Yeah, it can be bad. But anyway, I thought I'd talk about something kind of unrelated, weird, unless you guys have another topic you want to throw at me. Um, Anyone else noticed that this kind of fringe science or fringe archaeology guy, is it Graham Hancock, did that ancient apocalypse series, which I mean, a lot of his assumptions and a lot of the things he says are, let's just be kind of upfront, is kind of out there. Um, it is interesting that the um, legit archaeologists and all the right people are incredibly pissed off at this show. And usually I would pay this no mind, except there's two coincidences here. Um, somebody, are the Zayton, are the Zeta Reticulans hiring illustrators? Well, it depends. Send me your portfolio. I'm sure I've already seen it, but send it again. Put a link in the description. But whoa, the closest you got was working 80 hours a week, a year, and I started to see shadow people out of your eyes. Yeah, that is bad. I was getting the one where there weren't even shadow people. There were fully formed people in the corner of my eyes with features and movement. And yeah, that's when, or when objects on the desks look like they've been moved or are moving. Yeah, that's time to get some sleep in, damn it. Now, I have strongly mixed opinions on Graham Hancock and his was it ancient apocalypse theory. I think a lot of what he says is kind of, well, he enters it with he wants certain answers and he goes looking for them. But here's the part that's interesting. There's something he's done that's lent credence to his theories. And that is he's found plenty of shit that yeah, what'd they do this time? Other than deciding to ground all flights. Oh no, that wasn't a cyber attack. No, not at all. Um, and that is archaeologists seem to be getting very nervous at the notion that there was a civilization before the ice age. I mean, that seems to get them all very, very, very upset. And the fact is, we are turning up more and more evidence that we weren't just a bunch of Neolithic monkeys shitting on ourselves prior to the Ice Age. There were trade routes. Iceman, if you don't know anything about the finding of Iceman, showed that he was probably a merchant. He was carrying berries that only grow in Asia, and that it looks like he had been traveling a path back and forth between Asia and the Mediterranean for trade. Um, and that the clothing that he was frozen in, was not nearly as primitive as they should have been, and that seems to have made oh well, it's a fluke, that whatever. But we keep turning up little bits of evidence, structures that were built around 12,000 years ago, and I think that's really what's got them all pissed off. I think a lot of the stuff Hancock says is loony, but I think that's the thing, is that there's enough things he has uncovered because archaeology doesn't want to talk about it. And I find that very fascinating. That they would get so thoroughly pissed off when clearly there was a pre-Ice Age civilization and an Ice Age civilization. And I do mean civilization didn't just stop during the Ice Ages. It struggled. Absolutely, it struggled, but it didn't stop. There's some interesting evidence that a great catastrophe happened around 10 to 12,000 years ago. Evidence of advanced civilization is scant. Well, it depends on what do you mean by advanced. I think that's the operative word. I mean, are we talking tribal? Are we talking, was it proto city state? I mean, what's your idea of an advanced civilization? I mean, if you were to unearth evidence of there being a pre-Ice Age civilization with, say, the technological level of, say, the North American Indians or Native Americans on the East Coast, where they had small villages and wood huts and had trade and stone weapons. And we're not talking cars here. But yeah, it just seems like they're all flipping out because if that exists, that undoes a whole bunch of other things that they have just said, no, this is how it is, done. And I find that very interesting that they would go out of their way to want to, wash this over. I mean, I don't really see what the big fucking deal is. You find some, what was it? Are you familiar with the, was it the cave ruins or not cave ruins? Oh God, I'm not all that awake. Here in Arizona, there's these very, very small structures. I mean, they called them towns, but I mean, really, they were only maybe what a few 100 yards across at most. But yeah, it really depends on what you're meaning by advanced civilization. But the common theory is that the Sumerians went from being Neolithic cavemen who had just discovered farming to a fully functional civilization with language, math, knowledge of the weather, astronomy, and I guess advanced architecture as far as columns and arcs and stuff like that, arches, overnight. And tossing in, well, maybe this was knowledge that had already been known, it seems to really piss people off, or the certain people off. And it's like, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? I don't really see what the big deal is. I mean, as for the catastrophe, yeah, there was probably either a commentary, some sort of minor impact that kicked off an ice age, or volcanism that kicked off an ice age. But the other thing that's been really buried, they don't want to talk about this, is they don't want to let go of the fucking out of Africa theory. They keep wanting to claim, yeah, there was this catastrophe, everyone lived down in Africa, and then, after the catastrophe, everyone moved out of Africa. Except they keep finding villages and settlements in Ice Age Europe that predate the Africans by like a lot. And so that just completely blows the out of Africa theory completely out of the water. And again, why does that get everyone so pissed off? Okay, so it looks like you're finding older skeletons and older tools and ruins in Hungary and in Eastern Europe. Why is this a problem? Because they're white? This is ridiculous. But just bullshitting here. I have no answers. I have no idea. I think, again, the real problem with guys like Hancock is that he goes looking for a specific answer before he's not going completely in blank slate saying, okay, let's see what I find. He's looking to prove something. He already had his theory. The Ice Age ended like 10 to 12,000 years ago. Most of North America was under 3 miles of ice. Then something happened that would cause it to rapidly melt. Yeah. By the way, did you see the email I sent you? No, it's been rough, pal. Let me take a look. I mean, again, the good news is I've been writing like crazy, but on the bad side, I'm not here in the brain right now. I am so not all here. Oh, fuck. Well, I don't know if I can share all of these, but this is pretty awesome. I'll share the pages I can because, are you okay with me sharing these? I am impressed, my friend. Oh, and Piss Ant review copy. Excellent. I've been looking forward to this. Okay. Okay, cool. I'll share these in a minute. But anytime the establishment really doesn't want now, granted, Kat can speak to this better than I can. I will say that part of the problem, and I do mean part of the problem, is that archaeology until recently had always been about showmanship and almost nothing to do with real science. It was more about securing grant money, putting forth a theory, and your word being law. And anyone who knows anything about paleontology, everything we knew about the dinosaurs was wrong because, frankly, our knowledge of the dinosaurs started with a P.T. Barnum sort of impression. It was all about, look at these skeletons we found, and they take them on tour or sell them. And they were portraying them as these ancient dragons. A lot of the dinosaurs they were displaying didn't exist. They were just putting the bones together everywhere they found. The World is a Ghetto by War. I don't think I can play this, dude. I'll get a copyright strike. But anyway, yeah, turning out now that we let the forensics people actually start doing the work instead of paleontologists. And what do we find out? Dinosaurs probably looked like birds. Probably did not look like the terrifying, horrible, frightening animals we were always portrayed. And that kind of sucks. I mean, because we all kind of wanted to believe in dragons, didn't we? Yeah, it turns out they probably looked more like big toothy mouthed ostriches and cassowaries. The out of Africa theory has been modified. The initial human precursors probably arose in South Africa, dispersed longer ago than they recently believed, and then divided. That's bullshit. No, I'm just going to call bullshit right out. No, it did not start in South Africa. From what we're looking at, it probably started between Central Europe and the Mediterranean. Everything's pointing in that direction, and that just makes people uncomfortable. And you know what? I don't fucking care. I just look. It looks like that's where life probably really sprung up, or humanity sprung up. Too damn bad. So it makes people uncomfortable. I don't give a shit. The out of Africa theory was always pushed as some sort of weird racial. Well, see, we're all the same family. Well, okay, sure. Well, why can't you say the same if it turns out life actually started, um, between the Mediterranean and and Eastern Europe or Central Europe? Really, why? We're still that theory still applies. Is it they're uncomfortable that we all came from a family that was paler skinned? I don't get it. Um, oh yeah, exactly. So here's the part I was going to get to. Okay, clearly, there's enough evidence that there were precursor civilizations before the Ice Age. Are we talking, again, television sets and cars? No, we're not. We're not talking that at all. We're talking probably tribal civilizations on the level of, say, the Native Americans of the East Coast that we're familiar with, or maybe even, the something more akin to what the ancient Celts were. Or maybe even, well, actually, come to think of it, no, it'd have to be more than both of that, because the Sumerians very quickly learned language and math and architecture. But I would doubt any sort of proto-civilization exceeded the Greeks. Okay? I don't see the problem. I really don't. I mean, sure, it thoroughly screws up the idea that humanity started, what is it? Homo sapiens sapiens started 75,000 years ago. That completely screws that up for them, too. But I think at some point it would be better if science just said, look, we don't really understand. We don't have the answers. This is our best guess for now. I mean, that's what they're supposed to be doing. If science was never meant to be religious doctrine, okay, this is the true Genesis. Yeah, this is the true version of Genesis. Take it. But now here's the part that's kind of weirding me out. Now, I think part of Hancock's problem is the ancient apocalypse theory. You name a book something like that strictly to sell the fucking book. That's not a very scientific name, okay? You would definitely, a legit, actual, straightforward, okay, this is my argument, would not be selling itself on that concept. That's definitely salesmanship. But then again, saying proto-civilization for the Ice Age probably doesn't make a great book title now, does it? Titling something The Kings of Atlantis, on the other hand. But here's what's getting me, all right? UFOs. Since at least the late 40s, our government has spent an awful lot of money, and I do mean an awful lot of money, convincing the public UFOs are fake. And we're not talking about just people getting up on stage and saying, oh, that's bullshit, or, oh, we're just not going to talk about this in the news. We're talking about them doing the type of stuff like killing news stories. We're talking about them hiring full-time people, scientists, who would stake their reputation going around and lying about stuff. And, pretending not to be an alien in a human suit for a minute here, as just the human suit, for the longest fucking time, I wasn't a believer. Sure, I saw a UFO when I was 13 years old, right in broad daylight, and it was very impressive. But the alien stuff, yeah, none of that. Just in general, I didn't buy any of it. I thought it was pure confabulation. Except the more research I've been doing over time, and I'm talking decades of reading, from legit people, okay? People who were legit. A lot of that confabulation and weird ideas was put there intentionally by the government and the CIA, working with Hollywood, to create the notion that anyone who thought a UFO was real was crazy. And I get it. The Cold War was going on. The government needed to portray stability. Everyone was worried about Reds, rightfully so, by the way. But here's the problem. When the Soviet Union fell and Reds were no longer a problem, the government did not stop selling us on the idea that anyone who believed in a UFO was a kook. In fact, those programs kept going well into the current. And from a completely non-believer point of view, I after doing enough research, found enough to say, no, there definitely is something here. I can't tell you what, but there was far too much legitimacy. And the fact that they're in Air Force intelligence, there is a full-time job. They have a wing of people, they don't talk about it, who fake UFO crashes, then take UFO researchers out to see them. And then when the researcher comes back and tells everyone, oh, I've found something, or I've got this information, the government would then turn around and start going on about how this person's a nut. They say this, they say that, and do a public destruction of that person. That's a lot of effort for something that's not something that's just something that's not real. To fake a crash, take someone, show them the fake crash, then tell them, okay, yeah, tell the world. And when the person tells the world, go out of their way to discredit them, going so far as getting legit scientists to all go public and say, yeah, this guy's crazy. That's a lot of effort to shut someone up or to get the public not to take something seriously. No, I think Bob Lazar is actually a mirage man. I think he's actually one of those people working for the government to confuse the issue. And the reason being is I've done enough research in this to recognize a mirage man when I see them. A mirage man is not a man in black. A mirage man is a man whose job is to essentially fool the UFO community, get people to become true believers, then publicly embarrass them and make them look like fools. Rick Doty being the best of them, by the way. And it's interesting is Rick Doty, a very, very convincing liar, very good storyteller, worked for Air Force intelligence. He spent his career, faking UFO crashes and spreading weird theories and stuff to people who were legit researchers and legit scientists and journalists, and then turning around and destroying those people, saying, oh, see, they're full of shit. This is bullshit, and here's why. Okay? I mean, he usually didn't get kooks. He usually got people who were on the right path to something, usually someone who'd actually turned up real data. Another one that's interesting is the Rendlesham Forest incident from the 80s. During the Rendlesham Forest incident, when it initially happened, the men who had the experience were essentially shut up. All three of them talked quite extensively about how they had been drugged and had been put through bizarre interrogations that they don't remember well, and then let go out of the army, and it ruined their lives. When the evidence turned up that the men always said it existed, being a tape recording, that one of them had recorded on a cassette, he was talking about the experience bit by bit by bit. The tape it turned out that the officer that seized the tape from him had forgotten to clear it out of his desk. And when they were shutting down the base in England, it was found, somebody figured out what it was and released it. And suddenly the government goes from these guys are nuts, never happened, blah, they're just crazy, whatever, to suddenly all sorts of people within the Air Force just start popping up saying, yeah, I remember that happening, and making the most outlandish fucking claims. Suddenly there are all sorts of there's a lot of effort being put forward to confuse the issue. So getting back to Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is a very odd character. His credentials aren't legit. They really aren't. Although he was a scientist, he does make rockets. He is a bright guy. He was also a con artist, and he was also a pimp and went to prison for it. In Vegas, he was running a sex ring. Or have we heard this before? The interesting thing is he went public and he told all these stories about Area 51. And a lot of them were really outlandish, okay? Except as time goes on, more and more of the stuff you realize, some of the more outlandish stuff he claims were real. And then other inconsequential stuff was just like not real. It's weird. So there were things he said that were like absolutely real. And then peppered through it was, this kind of pseudo mythology. And that's kind of the game they play. And the weird part that creeps me out, or maybe not creeps me out, fascinates me. I don't get creeped by this. This fascinates me. Is a lot of the more outlandish stuff that Bob said was the shit that turned out to be real. That's the interesting part. Him taking rides in flying saucers. There's no way to prove that. There's a bunch of other things. The UFO, the United States having 12 UFOs at Area 51 that they were covered. Yeah, that's never been proven. But on the other hand, certain bits of technology, certain things turned out to be real. And I find that fascinating. Also, the whole thing was after there were enough coincidental cases of people who had never met each other, who had no way of being influenced by each other, and were not influenced by the media because it wasn't in the media at the time. The image of the gray alien, my people, saw gray aliens. In the 50s and 60s, there were a handful of experiences where they all saw the same thing. They were hundreds of miles apart, never knew each other, never had any contact. They were not crazy people, and they all had very similar experiences and all saw the same aliens. And the moment that started to get popular, those stories came out, we start seeing gray aliens in media everywhere. Now, an interesting one. Rick Doty, the Mirage Man that I said was the best of them, the one who was the best of that game, was a consultant for Hollywood, and that includes the X-Files. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? So you had a guy who was a professional liar telling the X-Files, okay, well, you should do this kind of plot. You do this. Meanwhile, one of Project Blue Book's main researchers, or the main researcher, Dr. Hynek, who is legit through and through, okay? They're more than happy to use all of Dr. Hynek's claims to cover it up, but later he left and said, no, I was lying. And he said, look, I kind of got railroaded into this job. At the time, my sole job was they'd tell me, well, here's something someone saw. What are some ways other than a UFO that this could have been? And he'd just come up with ideas. Well, it could have been this. It could have been this. Let's go test it. They never wanted to test any of it. He would say something, and then they'd say, it's swamp gas, done. They wouldn't test it. And in fact, they'd bury the story. And after a while, after frustration, Hynek risked his entire career, including completely discrediting himself. That was a big risk, just to go up front and say, no, Project Blue Book was a fraud. Here's why. And reading his book was the one that convinced me, no, there really is something there. What the fuck are they so scared of? And I will say, in everything in Hynek's research, there was nothing threatening, which I find interesting. I mean, as in an alien threat. It was not like that. It wasn't like, oh, we got space enemies at all. It wasn't that. Which I find very, very interesting. Even Carl Jung, his last book was on the experience of UFOs. Now, granted, you've got to be kind of a deep thinker to really get it, his book. But I'll try and put it in context. he said he didn't approach it from the notion of them being real or not. You could tell he thought they were real. And he wrote this book in like 1950. And I'll have you know, he was personal friends with the Dulles brothers. So he had a window right into the intelligence organizations of the early 50s and late 1940s. And he seemed to think they were real. What he wrote in his book was basically, okay, there's a phenomena we're seeing in the sky. There's a phenomena, and it's definitely happening. With the question of whether or not people are perceiving these things, without a doubt, people are perceiving these things. And then he got into the fact of it's how we're perceiving them that he was more fascinated with. And he said, well, what mythologies are we attaching to them? The object in the sky is the object in the sky, but we are attaching our own meanings to them without all the data. And he was more interested in that. And it was interesting that he finally came to refer to grays as technology angels, which I thought was a really interesting term. He said that essentially they filled the same role as New Testament, not Old Testament, New Testament angels, because you don't see many angels in the New Testament, or the later Old Testament angels. Basically, he said that the thing we kept attaching to them was kind of an awe, and they weren't a threat. They were more like delivering messages from beyond, which I found very interesting. I'm a huge fan of Jung, and I find it interesting that during the 60s all the way up until Gen X, Gen X is the one that really, really embraced him. The boomers, it's weird. You'd think the boomers would love Jung, but they went and beyond to go on about him being a fruitcake and a nut, and that everything was Freud, whereas Freud was a fucking pervert. The only person Freud ever truly diagnosed is himself, mommy issues. Freud had some severe mommy issues, and he was convinced everyone else had the same issues. So when you read Freud's work, what you're getting is a very detailed, very, very revealing insight into his brain, not everyone else's. Carl Jung, on the other hand, spoke like a storyteller. And I know this is a very hard concept for people to fully wrap their head around. I'm an atheist. I should get into it and do another show like that. Maybe get a Christian on. I agree with you, Fair Maiden. Freud was fucking evil. And he even tried to go out of his way to destroy and discredit Jung when he realized Jung was right. It's not even in question. So anyway, as an atheist, this is, again, I like the line in John 1:1, in the beginning there was the Word. And I realize for a lot of Christians who would take that in a very literal sense, there's not a lot to say. As a writer and as a storyteller, I find that being that's my favorite verse. It's the verse of all storytellers. It's in the beginning there was the Word. At the beginning of the story are the words telling the story, the narrative. And the narrative and the beginning of that story is God, is with God and is God. That's the logos, or kame, if you think about it. Now, that may piss people off. I'm not trying to piss anyone off. But understand, for me, even as an atheist, I think that the Bible is an important document for so many reasons, being that I don't need the miracles to be real. Sorry, I don't believe in miracles. I just can't embrace the miracle aspect of the religion. For me, the miracle is that it was a culmination of who we are as a people, and how we think. And there was so much of the primordial us, our psychology, in that book. And then later in the New Testament, such forward-thinking ideas of morals and philosophy, and these symbolic stories that gave us a vocabulary, the Word, to discuss huge, important ideas and to think in ways we could never think before. And the fact that the story has outlasted any human, it's been here for thousands of years. For me, that's the miracle, okay? that the story itself is more powerful than the book. The story is more powerful than any human being. The story itself has had the ability to guide the West, and for a time at least turn the West into the best civilization, the most equitable, the most advanced civilization in all of human history. That's the miracle. And that, in a sense, you can even look at story as being kind of magical or divine. Story itself, the symbols, these are all things that are rooted and deep in our subconscious that go back before there were even humans, before we had words. And I know that in early man, language and words were magic, because the moment you could name something, the moment you could remember, you could take an experience, put it to words, and tell somebody else about it, it was no longer powerful. It no longer had power over you. It was like suddenly, yes, now you could say, there's a tiger over there. The tiger will claw you, and that's why we need to avoid it. And if we keep the fire going, it won't come over here. The ability to share that information, that knowledge, was magic. And in a sense, it would be. I mean, if you think from the terms of a bunch of apes who every time they experienced the tiger, they only had their own memory to go off of, they couldn't share that knowledge with anyone. They couldn't write it down and refer to it later. Um, but so that's why there's also so many creation tales, where things begin with the birth of language. I really like Norse mythology a lot better than Greek, actually. I mean, Greek mythology is great, but I think on a, I guess people would call a spiritual level, I feel more for the Norse mythology, and that's because the gods are cooler, and Odin's the good father. I mean, he's often given a bad rap, but if you really read them, Odin's actually very, very much the good father. He's benevolent. He's a strong male. He's a strong father figure. He's just. And, there's the story where what does he do? His Promethean act, where Prometheus stole the fire from the gods so that men may be able to cook their food and eat, and no longer rely on the gods to provide them with fire. That was Prometheus in Greek mythology. Odin hangs himself, as must sound familiar, from a tree, and hangs himself from a tree and sacrifices one of his all-seeing eyes to the dwarves so that we may have the runes, the gift of language and the gift of writing things down, the gift of memory. His two ravens, I believe, are wisdom and memory. And in other versions of that tale, it's not just language, but the tools of civilization. He sacrificed an eye and gave them to man. Why would the first gift to mankind that changed everything for us and allowed us to become civilized would be words and language? In the beginning was the word. In the beginning was the word because that's when we started understanding things. That's when knowledge could outlive us. That's when stories and legends could outlive us and go on and on. So I find that fascinating. I also agree with the Gestalt psychology. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You're more than what happens to you. You're more than what you think or feel. You're more and you are. And yeah, genetic memory also proves that, to a certain degree, certain memories do get passed from genes to genes, parents to offspring. And some of those go all the way back to before we were human beings. I don't think you're wrong on John 1:1. That's why a lot of people tell artists to read the John's Gospel. That, and it's beautifully written. I mean, it really is. I mean, just from a writing perspective, I've said this plenty of times. Those Greeks did a hell of a job writing a lot of that, or giving it poetic language. And yeah, anyway, and a lot of them were Hellenized, but Jews as well. But yeah, the Greeks did a hell of a job. And the Gospels are full of Greek thinking and philosophy, which people don't really recognize. Yeah. Or do you mean the God of War? The All Father was done dirty in God of War Ragnarok. I agree. Yeah, he's the good father who looks over mankind. Um, and although she's a bit more flirtatious and gregarious, he was also the loyal husband, by the way. He wasn't Zeus, he was the loyal husband. Freya was the one that was more the party creature. Party. She was a good mother, but she did like to party. Afternoon, went to my old man on Sunday night morning for his paper job. Saw something odd after midnight. Not sure what it was, and sadly didn't record it. Well, what did you see? All right, it scrolled ahead on me. Sorry, give me a second here. Harble says there are Hindu sects who have mantras that mean nothing in any known language. Yogis claim they're about 6,000 years old. India's wild like that. All the okay then until you dig into the Harappa. You know, I should know more about Hinduism than I do the mythology. I mostly know about that hippie chakra shit, and that's goofy. Okay, continued. Showed up in the distance toward the northeast, looked like a ball of light. Through it was, thought it was a plane at first, but saw as it was coming more into the area, it disappeared, then reappeared overhead in the clouds, looked like the splitting in five, going in a ring pattern, then fading out again, only to show up going off into the distance. And yeah, that is a claim, not a claim. That is something a lot of people have reported seeing, and that goes back to the 80s of seeing a craft come down out of the atmosphere, split into multiple parts, fly around for a while, then come back and merge into one again, which is very fascinating. Odin's ravens are thought and memory, not wisdom and memory. Okay. The image of them flying around the world and returning to Odin with news is clear. Is clear shroom-induced vision quest metaphor. Well, the reason people often say drugs, vision quest, and all that is because it'll often throw you into the subconscious mind, and which thinks in symbols and in metaphor, which I think, again, as a culture, we are currently very starved of. We are very, very starved of symbols and metaphors. Things have gotten so material based that, if you can't see it or touch it, it's almost like the people can't even conceive of it. Which, like suddenly abstract thinking is just gone. You can't do it. People are incapable of it. And that's very depressing. Old man saw it, didn't know what it was, figured it might have been a signal flare, not sure what it was. Well, it depends on how fast they moved and if they took right angles or made maneuvers that shouldn't be possible. Now, there is one thing that in the 80s why such a site like that would be terrifying, because if an ICBM comes out of the atmosphere, the warhead then splits up into a MIRV, multiple independent remote vehicles, which is in each independent warhead then that flies off in a different direction. So the nuke would be coming down, and you'd see it flaring into the atmosphere, and it would split into like maybe what was it, between anywhere between 4 and 12 separate smaller nukes, and they'd fly off in different directions toward different targets. I could see how that would scare the ever living shit out of someone living in the 1980s. The bit about it then, but MIRVs don't then return back to the nuke. They don't fly around, do some aerobatics, then all merge back into one, which is something people also see. And I've seen videos of. Then it reappeared over in the clouds, looked like it was split. Oh, sitting to 5, a ring pattern, then faded out again. Okay. Now, I will say that I know that drones have gotten very impressive on putting on light shows, and we'll just leave it at that. Manifestation can come about from words. It's a godlike quality ability. God spoke light into being. He spoke the world into being. Words are power. Well, if you were to take that the John line, the word was with God. Word with God is God. Would that mean the language itself is God? I mean, that's the logos. That's the Greek logos, and that's something I can go with. That makes sense to me. Now, the thing is I think for the vast majority of humanity, whether I'm right or wrong as an atheist, I don't think I'm that important. Um, I think most people do need there to be a physical manifestation of God. And if you guys are right, good for you. I'm glad. That means that's a very comforting thought. And I would never want to take that from anyone. And I think for the vast majority of humanity, that's what people need. And we need to allow that. This horrible push to make us 100% materialistic. You know, for hippies who are always going on about being spiritual, they're sure materialists, aren't they? Oh, I loved The Northman. I loved it so much, we went up and bought the movie immediately after watching it. It was so damn good. And yeah, if you understand Norse mythology, a lot of the symbolism in that field, you'll get more out of the film. You know, the two ravens keep showing up at certain times, things like that. The fact that the evil brother seems to worship Fenrir. Okay, let's see. Going through these. Do not get me started on the disservice Kali crystal healing woo and European vegetabilists and their knockoff yoga Pilates did to Indian culture. Yeah. And, you know, that's another thing. For spiritual people, they sure embrace the most materialistic, just, communism. Communism is so materialist. There's nothing but power and goods. That's it. The product of your work. That's it. There's no abstract. There's no metaphor. There's nothing beyond the state. No, that's fucking evil. That is evil if there ever was evil. And wanting to uproot individuals from their culture, uproot them and steal their mythology and wipe them into clean slates to free them, quote unquote, free them from the past. No, you learn from the past. Blank slate. Okay, great. You're a human vegetable. You don't know anything. You're a tool. You can be shaped. They want to meld people like clay to like drones to do whatever they want. That's communism. Fuck that shit. Fuck them. I would gladly spend the rest of my life with hardcore fundamentalist Christians than communists any day. And I'll tell you why. Because even the worst of the worst hypocritical fundamentalist Christian in the 80s at least fucking believed in something beyond themselves. Okay? At least whatever they were peddling still had a moral compass and a deeper purpose to what man is, rather than just being tools to be shaped for the state. Have you ever encountered any hippies who weren't materialistic? No, I have not. Not in the least. Well, unless you want to consider the ones that were like full on hardcore homeless and didn't own anything and just, you know, shot heroin into their arms on the street. Then it was all about just the heroin. A late cop-out maybe, but it didn't help explain why everyone after one was not acting how they're described in the myth. I'm missing a part of I'm missing a part of that comment. So, do you mind repeating that? What you mean by that? Give me context. Um, yeah, there is a lot in the Northmen that, unless you are versed in Norse mythology, um, you'll miss a lot. And there's a lot in there that are like, well, you would, I guess the word we'd call it subliminal nowadays, but it's not. There's symbolic language being in the story of the Northmen, as well as just the story happening on screen. The chapters are broken up by you get the chapter breaks in each section of the movie, but those hallucinations he has are like at certain scenes when like the two ravens are sitting there, that tells you something's going to happen, or when you see the dog, that tells you something is about to happen. Um, or it's supposed to tell you this means this. And the hope is that those symbols are so buried in your mind that it'll trigger without you even needing to think about it consciously. Your subconscious saw it. You didn't notice, but your brain did, you know? Um, got the Northman on physical media Christmas, Hamlet minus. Well, yeah, it turns out, did you know that the Northman is based on an actual series of tales from the Edda, and Hamlet was largely borrowed from those stories. It predates Hamlet. And I don't know, for those of you, it's not a major plot point, so it's not really important. You get this repeated mention that the Northmen will bear two children or father two children, and that one would be a daughter king. And it's just mentioned, but nothing ever becomes of it. That is because in the Edda, and I hope the story gets told. Um, there is a story about a shield maiden of royal blood who lives as a man in and serves as chieftain until someone can actually fill the throne, because no one else could. And that's his daughter. And that character, I don't remember her name, the daughter who is the daughter king, um, was what Eowyn was based on in Lord of the Rings. The character of Eowyn was a direct reference to that story by Tolkien. Tolkien referenced the Edda quite a bit in Lord of the Rings. Do you have any good books on symbolism and spiritualists and spiritualism? You're asking the wrong person. Do I have them? No. Kat has a big fucking pile of them. She's been on a major spiritualism kick, especially the fraudsters, and the whole movement in itself and how it developed side by side with stage magic. Ask her or email her or bring it up next time she's on the show. She would love to talk about the whole phenomena of spiritualism that happened in the late 1800s to about the 50s, 1950s. Christian fundamentalists and communists are the same, though. They just have different gods. Well, yeah, but one of them's a moral god and one of them's Karl Marx. You know? You see what I mean? The source material, no matter how bad a Christian fundamentalist can get, the source material is much more refined, pure stuff, much more ethical and meaningful and purposeful than the garbage Marx cranked out. Okay? Sure, there are plenty of fundamentalists out there that took the Bible and tortured it long enough to make the Bible say anything they wanted it to. But it's still the Bible. The text doesn't change. The Communist Manifesto is always going to be the Communist Manifesto, a big fucking piece of shit lies meant to trick simple-minded people into becoming selfish assholes and hating people and turning civilizations against themselves and destroying culture. That's the difference. Could be a drone. The old man thinks it was a signal flare due to the way the light looked. But the burning ball of light, I've never seen a flare do that. Shrugs. Sorry if it's kind of, no, it's not vague at all. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and the problem is it's gotten to the point now where, yeah, drones can make very impressive displays that look like UFOs. But the thing is, what you're describing, people have been seeing those since at least the 1980s, and I know that Hynek took reports in the 60s, I believe, that said the same thing. So yeah, not bad from the guy who also directed The Witch. Yes, I didn't really like The Witch. I felt like there was a whole bunch of story and it just never got told. The old movie review, the Kino Corner, mentioned the original stories of the Northman, huh? Oh, that's cool. Good. God's morals are dubious at best. Which God? Okay, which God? You keep in mind, as someone who, again, I'm sorry to keep repeating it, I'm an atheist, but this is all myth and I guess uh, it's our symbolic story laid down in words. It's a tale of what goes on in our subconscious mind and our collective subconscious. God's morals are dubious at best. Which God? Um, Yahweh or the cosmic Father God that Christ spoke of? No, I don't think they're the same character, and I never will. They're not the same fucking character. I know that that's offensive to some people and very blasphemous, but no, they're not the same fucking character. Yahweh has all the traits of a jinn, and by jinn, yeah, genie, jinn, a desert spirit, or more specifically, rather, a desert demon. The column of smoke and fire, the burning bush, uh, talking in voices, just about everything Yahweh does is right out of the old tales of the jinn demons that lived out in the desert. And those have been around longer than the Old Testament. Um, Not only that, the Old Testament God was not all knowing. He could be lied to, he could be tricked, he could be fooled. If you knew his true name, you could command him to do things. Thou shalt not take God's name in vain. Some have theorized what they mean is those who know his true name should not use it um, in vain or selfishly because horrible things happen. Like when a bunch of kids made fun of what was it? What was the one prophet or yeah, it was one of the Jewish prophets. The uh, kids came to town and they all made fun of his baldness. So he shouted in God's name for the kids to be punished and mauled by bears. And so bears showed up and killed all the kids. He commanded God to do that for him. That's not the New Testament God. The New Testament God is an all-knowing, all-loving, forgiving God who cannot be tricked, cannot be bargained with, cannot be, does not have petty vengeances, does not hurt people for his own amusement, does not make bets with the devil just to see what would happen. Do you see my point? So I will never accept that it's the same character. The God of the Israelites in the Old Testament is not the God that Christ spoke of as the Father. That is a cosmic universal God um, who seems to transcend space and time. The God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, is earthbound. And he is so earthbound that he even has the same weakness that a lot of earthbound supernatural characters do. The Fae, you can hurt them with iron, cold iron. The Jinn, cold iron hurts them. Yahweh, iron can defeat him. That's right. He's got a weakness to iron. It's in the Bible. Check it out. So no, I will not accept that the brute and sadist that's in the Old Testament is the father, the all-loving father of the New Testament. I thoroughly, in my opinion, it was simplified for the masses, is my opinion. Honestly, I don't think they would have got it. I think that when they sat down and finally decided, okay, this is what's going to be in the Bible officially, they sat down and decided, no, well, this is too confusing. We'll just say it's the same God. Also, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert. Christ pretty much made clear that the 10 commandments were unnecessary, that you only needed, what was it, 2 or 3? And it was that he said in the Sermon on the Mount, which is love thy neighbor as thyself. And oh God, it's been a while. It's been a few years since I've read it. Correct me, someone. Going through this. I use the Northmen to draw culture for Sibyl and Bastian. Hebram are meant to be Norsemen in design and nature. Have you studied the Norse culture? They're not the bunch of savages that they're always portrayed as or had been portrayed as. And Greeks were always kind of shown as being the height of civilization at the time. But the Nordic societies were actually very well ordered. They had architecture, they had advanced building methods, they had advanced hygiene, and their culture itself was for such a harsh environment and always being portrayed as being this very I don't know. There's this need to portray the Viking culture as sexist. No, actually, they very much respected and needed strong women, and there were roles other than mother for women in that society, such as spiritual leaders. There was a few other things that women could do, but of course, at the end of the day, in such a harsh climate, the most important thing is to bear children. So yeah, I guess if you're a feminist, that's sexist, but whatever. But no, they were basically they were far more civilized than anyone wants to give them credit for. It's also probably why the Japanese traded with them. Well, there was one other, and yes, like every other society on the planet at the time, it required slaves, but by and large, as you notice in the Northmen, treating slaves poorly and treating slaves as cattle was not heroic. It was frowned upon. The bad king was a bad king in that movie because of how he treated his slaves and how he did not value what his people had. Think about that. We have this image of slavery thanks to Roots, that there was only one kind of slavery. Truth be told, depending on, in a sense, slave was almost a job in Rome, and slaves had rights. Now, I'm not saying they were great rights, but it wasn't what's portrayed in movies. I mean, if you wanted that level of brutality in terms of slavery, you'd have to look to the Middle East or Africa. In fact, the idea of treating your slaves as just cattle was a very bad idea, or not looked at. Just no. I should get Kat in here. She's better on this topic for history. Yahweh was the Alpha Jinn to Jinn. Yeah, basically. Have to go out and watch my GDs then, or I don't. Gods are weak against iron. So George Stephenson was the modern King. George, I don't know who that is. I'm sorry, George Stephenson. By the way, I sent an email concerning the writer's room to me, or is it in the Discord? I'll have to go check. Well, the nice thing about the Nordic society, and I think the reason Odinism is coming back, is you've got a father figure. And that was the one problem with the father god, or the heavenly father of the New Testament. he was a cosmic god. He is a cosmic god beyond space and time. He is so distant and so far away. You can't really look at him and say, that's a father figure to model myself after as a man. That is not something to aspire to. You don't get, he doesn't set an example. I mean, you have Christ, but Christ in the Bible doesn't really get married or have children. Odin does, and Odin's the good father. So I think that's one of the real appeals of the Norse mythology. The other one being is that it is a full embrace of masculinity and the powers of masculinity and the necessity of masculinity and the rituals of masculinity. And there's a place for both man and woman and where they meet in the Nordic culture, because women were highly valued too. I mean, and the female goddesses were not to be trifled with. But yes, Odin and Freya were supposed to be an ideal marriage. I mean, what young man doesn't want that in his life? To be a good father, to be a successful man, to marry a beautiful woman who mothers your children. But when things get rough, she yanks out a sword and kicks some ass alongside you. What man doesn't want that woman in his life? Think about it. Okay, there you go. Abigail's got it. Love your Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as your. Thank you. And that's because a lot of the commandments don't really make sense if you think them through, or are kind of debatable if you think them through. That and the commandments kept changing. There's no one set of 10 commandments. But also that command, it's what is your God? What does God symbolize? What does he mean in that statement? Love your God. What did that imply? That's a very loaded statement. We don't know. We can't ask Christ. He isn't here to tell us right now. I'm sure when he was giving his orations to the crowds, it was probably referencing plenty of cultural things that we have forgotten or don't remember. The Vikings were just evil brutes, and the Africans were noble savages, according to modern culture. Yeah, exactly. But see, those two commandments require more thought. Make a moral decision. It's not the shut up and listen of Yahweh. Speaking of roots, that black was plagiarized from a book called The African. Oh, really? The well-educated Greek men sold themselves into slavery as house philosophers to the Roman aristos. See Tiberius and his Greek surgeon. Yeah, exactly, and I Claudius. Also, there's a great portrayal of a slave in Rome called Poscar that's just hilarious. In The Northman, the brother dismanual manual labor with his son to teach him a lesson about ruling his slave. Exactly. Is it true Vikings did frown on killing the mentally handicapped because it made the gods angry? I don't know. I'll just say I don't know. Yet no graven images. That can be taken in so many ways. So many ways. And the bit about idol worship, it just goes on and on. Frigg, Freya. Am I confusing them again? Freya's shit. Wait a minute. Freya is Thor's wife? Shit. The problem is that so many of those goddesses have two names. Frigg and Freya may be the same one. I mean, I know that Fenrir and Fenris are the same character. The God of the Bible is the father to Christ and humanity, though his fatherhood wasn't a direct. His marriage was to Israel. Christ's marriage is to the church. I don't question any of that, Abigail. My knowledge and from where I come at Christianity, I was actually educated mostly by Catholic nuns. So And I mean, don't get me wrong, they were very good teachers. I learned a lot, but my knowledge is far from complete. So I'll just be honest. I honestly don't know what you mean by that. I don't understand that statement. There is clearly a lot of story behind all three of those sentences, and I don't know what references to call back on to get the symbolism you're getting at. And I'm just, just completely honest here. Just be upfront. Let's show JEC's work. I keep saying that I'm going to do that. JEC sent me some images because it looks like we really are going to. Yeah, okay. I'm going to leave some images out because of boobage, but Space Hunter Reiko appears. It looks like we're really going to do it, which makes me thrilled. I've been dying to get back to comics. Now, these are thumbnails, okay? These are not finished art by any means. These are thumbnails, although I got to admit, for thumbnails, they're pretty damn good. Usually, I'm not used to getting thumbnails from an artist this good, this well done. I mean, Patrick's final versions of his art were great, but his thumbnails were often very sloppy. Okay, so here we go. We've got, oh God, I love the lightning bolt on her head. There's the robot Voluptua, and Reiko's holding Dr. Meyer at gunpoint, about to arrest him. Now we're going to jump ahead to page 6 because there were some titties I can't show you. She gets zotted by the tit gun, or the Gazonga zapper, and her tits start growing. And oh, no, I take that back. It's out of order. Okay, so she's arresting him. She gets bonked by Voluptua. Dr. Meyer zaps her. She's on the ground. Dr. Meyer's thrilled. They make a break for it as her boobs start to grow uncontrollably. And then I can't show you anything, but I do have a page 2 and 3. I love it. I love it. These are great. Let me see. Is there any more I can show you guys? Oh, there is a page 1. Let's see. Did I not download that one? Sorry for showing these out of order. I'll show them again on another cast in order. How about that? Oh, shit. Wait. There's a reason I can't show you page 1. I'm going to show you page 1 anyway, but very briefly so I don't get in trouble. Okay? Hopefully no one notices. Yeah. Okay. You saw it. Okay. It's going to be fun to do something lighthearted and totally not serious. I've gotten back. For those who are unaware, for all the lack of sleep I'm having, I got out of my slump. I think I've recovered from the depression and just all the shit from December, and I am back on writing. Yeah, I know. You'll believe it when you see it, right? But I'm now doing that final last sprint to get Boobs of Steel done, and I can finally put this project to bed. It ate up far more time in my life than I ever damn predicted, but oh well, right? I guess something this complicated was bound to go out of control, and I went off on a few tangents that turned out to be wrong or just unneeded. Well, okay, this is a good one. And okay. Where is it? There's a debate over if Freya and Frigg are the same person. I was reading somewhere about the. Well, yeah, I've read the stories, and there's plenty of reason to think that over the millennia, things got confused and names got confused and characters got merged. In fact, this is my own personal theory. Loki may have been a title. Okay, Loki may not have actually been a name, but a title, or there may have been two Lokis. Because in the creation myth, Loki is Odin's brother, and he helps create man and woman. And he gives man and woman the gift of thought. There were three figures. I forget which the third one was, but Odin, his brother, and one other. maybe it was Freya, I forget. One of the other figures created man, and they're in their creation legend. And for a long time, Loki was aloof, but the wise man, and someone not to be trifled with. But he was, because he was so damn smart, they were kind of scared of him. But he was not quite the trickster and son of a bitch that he became later. And honestly, you read the stories because somewhere along the line, it's Loki is Thor's brother and Odin's son. So could it be that the second Loki was named after Thor's or Odin's brother, or was was that Loki Junior? You know, Loki Odin's Loki Loki Loken's. I don't know, but no, was that did Odin name his second son after his brother? It's a very good question because it would explain how he went from being kind of this almost Merlin type figure who was very wise and very aloof and kind of creepy because he was so damn smart, to a trickster and a son of a bitch and young. Okay, you see what I mean? Yeah, sorry about the page number thing. They downloaded weird. And I think that's a thing that we've forgotten about mythology and religion itself is it wasn't really until the Holy Roman Empire that they wanted one solid, this is it, this is the official version. Prior to that, a lot of religions and mythology, everything was canon. So the Egyptians did not have one version of their myths. There were multiple, and everything was canon. They just didn't argue about it. It might have been the same thing with the Nordic. The Greeks definitely had that. I'm sure that was kind of normal for most cultures at the time. German mythology spun off from Norse mythology. So did the Celtic myths. Yes, and the Vikings conquered the Celts, traded with the Celts, made babies with the Celts, and that's why the Celts got taller. They have similar characters under different names. Now, that's what I call big old bazookas. Dr. Meyer, love the drawing. Glad you're doing better. Yeah, well, I'm glad I'm being creative. I'm not 100%. I woke up screaming today. So, frankly, being not mentally great but writing a lot is better than just feeling bad and not doing anything, right? Do I have an Discord? Yeah, I still do. I think I can finally link it now. Um, Wolf, can you get Crash to link the Discord? Okay. Maybe Odin named his son after his brother. It's common. I think that really was it. I think that is it. Uncle Loki, yeah. We named a rat Loki once. Let me go through here. Let's see. All right, so it looks like I actually got through most of the comments I was going to answer. Wolf, can you tell me what's up with Eloise? I mean, there was so much bullshit going on, and she seems to have been the one that got stepped on. And I really feel bad about that because she was so damn supportive, and we appreciated everything she did. And she seemed to have needed to take a break because somebody was a complete douchebag. And I would love to have her back running the Discord. She created it. She did a great job on it. And I don't know, she's such a well-meaning person. It's rare in the world to get someone who is just doing something because they want to, doing something because they love it, and There's no ulterior motives behind what she was doing. When I talk to her, she's obviously what you see is what you get, which again is so rare these days. I would love to have her back hanging out with us regularly on the show, or at least in the chat and running our Discord. So I don't know if there's any way we can repair that. And yeah, all over some douchebag idiot who's just a spurg. Seriously, what the fuck? And if she wants to talk to me about what I think she should do as far as a moderator, yeah, absolutely. I would want her back as the moderator, and I would want her to be able to have more discretion. I think if she had only known that it would have been okay to boot those negative elements and toxic elements from the Discord sooner, I don't think any of this would happen. And really, if only I'd known, I would have gone to her directly and just said, you know what? No, these people are being assholes. Nobody likes them, and they're treating you like shit for no reason. Kick them out. I have no problem with that. I just wish Eloise knew that. All right, so let's see. Eloise is still in the Discord. Yeah, but I want her to run the Discord. Eloise is usually in the chat. Okay. I just haven't been seeing much of her lately. Eloise is at work right now. You can reach her outside. You know what? I know I've got so many comments and people to get back to on Twitter, and I have not looked at my messages in 3 months because even though it's got better now because of Elon Musk, I fucking hate social media now. It used to be so much fun. And there's like this dread every time I click on Twitter. All right. She had 5 guys recently. Zoe Quinn? Let's see. I had a land name in Lucky, but her thick accent made it sound like Loki. Oh, well. Was she always trying to rip you off? JC, did you get put back on? That pissed me off so much when that happened. When you got kicked. What the fuck? Don't worry, Ish. She left it in good hands, my friends. When it comes down to security and keeping peace, I tolerate no bullshit. Good. Thank you, Wolf. Thank you. You're the one running it now? You're in charge? It's in good hands then. I trust you. But I would still like her back. Just because I like her. Just because she's a good person, you know? And because, frankly, those who will not be named really, really treated her like shit. And it pisses me off to no end. I mean, it really pisses me off. And I'm still mad about it. The way she was treated. Okay, well, tell you what. Oh, and by the way, did JC get his account back, Wolf? Just out of curiosity. Okay, well, you know what? I've been on for almost an hour and a half, which is about an hour longer than I thought this would go on. So, any last minute questions, and then I'm gonna try and write some. Okay, JC didn't get kicked. He quit, got pissed on the furry who got kicked off, didn't want to make a scene. You know what? Sometimes I think we do need to make a scene. And you know what? I wish I'd either been paying attention. Maybe you guys had tried to contact me. Maybe you didn't, and I didn't notice. I know I'm awful with that. I wish I had been paying attention and noticed and had stepped in sooner. That's my fault. Ever look into Slavic mythology? Yeah. What little I know, I find it really fascinating. I think the character of Ilmarinen is very, very interesting. He's kind of the equivalent to Vulcan, but without the handicap. Anyway, I will talk to you guys tonight, I think. We're going to have Raltz on, and we're going to talk about his book. And to all a good night or something like that. Links for my stuff in the description.